we do have former Governor Johnson of New Mexico. Welcome to the show, Governor Johnson. You are the Libertarian candidate for president this year. Is that correct?
That's correct. I'm going to be one of three candidates on the ballot in all 50 states. President Obama, Mitt Romney being the other two.
So have you got a birth certificate? I'm sorry. I had to go there.
Governor, before we jump into the issues, for our listeners that are not too familiar with the Libertarian Party, can you tell us a little bit about what the party stands for?
Well, I think speaking with a broad brushstroke, I think the majority of Americans in this country are fiscally responsible and socially accepting. I'm in that category, and I think speaking with a broad brushstroke, that's the Libertarian Party. Strong on civil liberties, strong on balancing the federal budget.
You know, I was doing a little research for this interview, Governor Johnson, and oddly enough, you ended up in some YouTube videos done by the 10th Amendment Center on nullification. I just finished a piece on our blog site at the Patriot, or 925thepatriot.com. And it was interesting to hear your words actually sort of mimic what I'd already written. And I thought, wow, he and I are on the same wavelength on the issue of nullification. And I know we talked that we were going to bring you on about immigration, but I really didn't realize that you were that much of an expert on nullification. Would you mind explaining to folks a little bit about what nullification is?
Well, really, I'm not an expert at all on nullification.
Well, you sounded like it on YouTube.
Well, I'm not, but I certainly support the notion of states being able to overturn federal law. I mean, just the general concept and the notion that if we were to have a constitutional amendment allowing for that would be a good thing.
All right, and one of the ideas behind nullification, which you can read about either on the 10th Amendment site or our website, is that if a law is considered unconstitutional, and this was first proposed by Thomas Jefferson, that a state has the authority to go ahead and just make that law null and void within that state boundaries. And that was done with the Alien Sedition Acts. It was also done with the Fugitive Slave Act by 14 of the northern states and that sort of thing. So it's nothing new, and it's never really been tested in court. So theoretically, if something like the DREAM Act, which was instituted by fiat, by executive order this week, and is turning out to be somewhat of a fiasco, theoretically, a state could, if they thought it was unconstitutional, could nullify the DREAM Act, which was instituted by executive order. Is that basically the theory there?
That would be my understanding, yes.
All right. So, given that the president has basically opened the gates for immigration, how are we going to be able to fix? We have what? Something where on the order of 11 to 14 million people who theoretically are here illegally. In other words, here without a work visa or any other visa, and therefore violating our immigration laws. Therefore, they are here illegally. What are we going to do? We can't certainly round them all up and ship them back. I mean, we would end up looking something like Nazi Germany, 11 million people. What would we do with these people?
Well, I am under the, first of all, when it comes to immigration, I think that we should make it as easy as possible for someone that wants to come into this country and work to get a work visa. Not a green card, not citizenship, but a work visa that would entail a background check and a Social Security card so that applicable taxes would get paid. Now, I am advocating the fair tax. Taxes would not be an issue if all we had was one federal consumption tax. Whether you were illegal, legal, visitor to the United States, or U.S. citizen, no one would be able to avoid paying one federal consumption tax. For the 11 million illegal immigrants that are here in this country right now, I think we need to set up a grace period where we can document those 11 million workers, allowing them to get a work visa. And then let's look at border violence and recognize that it is a prohibition phenomenon. Legalizing marijuana would arguably eliminate about 75% of the border violence with Mexico, that being the estimate of the drug cartel's activities that are engaged in that trade. And as a border governor, New Mexico, I would not advocate building a fence across the border.
Governor, this month we've seen, like Mac was saying, we've seen the president issued executive orders, and it seems like he's bypassing Congress instead of having this conversation and, the give and take and having Congress try to find a bipartisan solution. He's just saying, well, here it is. If you've been in America for a certain length of time, you have a high school diploma, boom, I'm going to give you amnesty. Do you agree? Does it seem like he's bypassing Congress?
He may well be bypassing Congress. I happen to agree, though, with the premise that a lot of kids are being I don't know what I should describe it. Really, this was nothing within their. It wasn't choices that they made, and the breaking up of families because of immigration law. I think that we should not be breaking up families due to immigration law.
Well, I think everyone agrees with that, and I know the Democrats love to say that Republicans, want dirty air, dirty water, break up families. I mean, that's ridiculous. We have to do something with these people, and we need to come up with a fair solution. But my concern, and I think Mac's concern as well, is that this guy just throws executive orders out there, and he decides, well, this is what I'm going to do, and there it is. And you've been the governor of a border state. Getting back to the original source of the problem, what's the solution? How do we secure the border down there?
Well, I think securing the border is documenting those workers that are coming into the United States. I would pose that Mexicans would stand in line to get a work visa if that line was moving, as opposed to what exists today, which is you can't get a work visa and come into this country. So you know that if you can cross the border, even illegally, that you can get a job, as opposed to the proper documentation.
And then the other part. Go ahead, sir. Sorry.
Well, just one of the reasons we have 11 million illegal immigrants in this country was a byproduct of Reagan when he set up his amnesty period. He put the government in charge of quotas. Putting the government in charge of matching up businesses with labor, and that was a breakdown from day one. I'd like to get government out of that business completely. Look, if you want to come into the country and work, here's a work visa. If there's work, there'll be work. If there isn't work, why, nobody's going to hang around.
And that is essentially the kind of program we had prior to 1964. It was Lyndon Johnson that abolished the guest worker program that basically you have just described. He abolished it under the pressure of various unions that said, no, these people are working a lot cheaper than what we want. We can, raise our union wages if we abolish this guest worker program. But all it basically did was force all of these workers to work under the table.
I completely agree, and I've also found, I'm probably speaking the obvious, and you guys have probably had this conversation a million times, but the only time that wages are an issue is when there's an issue of language, and everyone that's coming into this country, meaning Mexicans that are coming into this country, recognize that that they need to learn the English language, and when they do, wages are not, there's no disparity in wages.
Sure. Yeah, that was a study done by the Miami Herald about 10 years ago. They published a study, and it's one of the few newspapers that still does real, honest-to-goodness journalistic research. And they said that for those folks that did not learn English, for immigrants that did not learn English, they earned somewhere between 20 and 40% less than the immigrants that did learn English.
Governor, you mentioned another provision that or possibility. I'm sure it's controversial. Possibly legalizing marijuana to reduce the violence on the border?
Well, legalizing marijuana would not have as its number one reason reducing border violence, but it would, in fact, reduce border violence. I happen to be opposed to the drug war A through Z. When it comes to marijuana, I think we are at a tipping point in this country. 50% of Americans now support legalizing marijuana. Why is the number so high? I think it's because people are talking about it. We're having a discussion about it right now. Those listening.
Yeah, well,
I have a discussion after we're listening. But
right, and Governor, just Just for the record, I have to be on the other side of that. It's a hallucinogen. It is horrible to the central nervous system. It's horrible to the lung tissues and that sort of thing. And we can identify a lot of other pastimes that are also equally bad. But I can't stomach the idea of that being legalized. But I understand. I respectfully disagree.
Well, I have to tell you that I grew up smoking marijuana, as did probably 100 Americans.
Well, there's a lot of people out there that did too. I'm not one of them, but
neither am I.
I used to be in the Coast Guard, Governor, so I kind of was on the front line of the war on drugs down there. I don't know what the numbers are now, but I know back then approximately 90% of the cocaine makes it into the United States was the unofficial estimate. I mean, the only way to really track it is look at the price of coke on the street, supply demand. If the price is going up, we're cutting into the supply a little bit. But you're right, the war on drugs is, whatever side you're on, the war on drugs is somewhat of a failure. And we throw a lot of money at it.
Let me just completely disagree with the premise that marijuana is a dangerous drug. It's not. I don't drink alcohol, I don't smoke pot, but I have done both, and I will tell you that in no category is marijuana more dangerous than alcohol. Denver, 6 years ago, voted to decriminalize marijuana on a campaign based on marijuana being safer than alcohol.
Well, regardless of whether it's a drug or not, I don't think the idea of putting smoke in your lungs, whatever kind of smoke it is a great idea. I mean, that's idiotic.
It's not a great idea, but should you go to jail because you're putting smoke in your lungs?
I agree. Decriminalizing is probably a step in the right direction. Absolutely.
No, decriminalizing turns its back on more than half the problem, which is the fact that it has to be sold, that somebody has to sell it. And so if we decriminalize, what we're going to end up doing is and that's what we're doing now. People in jail are those that have sold marijuana. And the reason they're selling marijuana is yesterday they were a user, but today they're a seller because the seller got caught and he's in jail.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the endless drug cycle that exists in this country. We have 2.3 million people behind bars. We have the highest incarceration rate and number of people behind bars of any country in the world. Communist China has 4 times our population. They have 1.5 million people behind bars.
Well, I agree. It's a debate worth having. We spend a ton of money on it. We could legalize it. We could tax it big time. And then we could probably reduce huge expenditures in the jails when we bring the populations down. I don't know that I want everyone running around high, but it's a debate worth having.
We don't want anyone running around high, and by that I mean it'll never be legal to smoke pot, become impaired, and get behind the wheel of a car. But that ought to be the focus. Not smoking pot confined to your own home, doing no harm to anyone, arguably, than yourself. That should not be criminal.
All right. Well, Governor Johnson, we do appreciate this. We're out of time for this segment, and I respectfully disagree with your issue on legalization. But there are a lot of other aspects of libertarian philosophies that the Tea Party and many conservatives agree with. And I truly thank you for coming on the show, sir.
I appreciate you guys having me on. Thanks very much.
You take care. We have much more for you after these messages. You're listening to The Boiling Point.